In any sport, at any level of play, your player's dreams and season can abruptly end with a heartbreaking ACL or ankle injury. The Journal of Sports Engineering and Technology, Volume 223, reports that lower extremity injuries account for 50% of all sports injuries. And it's not just contact with opposing players that causes these injuries. It's contact with the playing surface. In fact, according to findings published by the Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine in 2010, about 70% of ACL injuries are related to contact with the playing surface. More specifically, the amount of resistance a playing surface exerts on a player's foot as it rotates. The more resistance, the more torque, the more risk of injury. However, 2 independent studies demonstrate the type of synthetic turf you purchase can have a dramatic effect on these injuries to your players. A recent NFL Charities Foundation study conducted by Michigan State University and published in the Journal of Sports Engineering and Technology found that a commonly used synthetic turf design with wider fiber rows and heavy infill may lead to more cleat penetration and greater rotational resistance on a player's foot. Notice how the infill encapsulates and traps the cleat. This rotational resistance causes the higher peak torques that cause injury. This same turf design was cited in a separate study commissioned by the National Football League's Injury and Safety Panel, published in the Journal of Sports Medicine, as resulting in 67% more ACL injuries and 31% more eversion or high ankle sprains than natural grass. Conversely, the Michigan State study found that next to grass, the gold standard for rotational traction, the turf with the lowest peak torque was AstroTurf 3D, the only turf system with narrow fiber rows, ambient infill, and a nylon root zone. The root zone provides support for the fibers while needing less infill for stability, which limits cleat contact with the infill and results in lower peak torques. While the highest peak torque was found on wide-gauge, heavy infill systems where no nylon root zone was present. The study showed the use of ambient infill also contributed to lower peak torques since it is incapable of packing as tightly as cryogenic infill. The difference is dig. Density, the quantity of fibers in the surface pile. Infill, the amount of sand and rubber particles added into the pile fibers. Gauge, the distance between the rows of turf fibers. It's simple. Fields with less fiber density, heavyweight infill, and wider rows, wide gauge, have high dig, which means players run a higher risk of having their cleats lock in the infill, causing high peak torque and greater risk of injury. Fields with more fiber density, lightweight infill, and narrow gauge have low dig, which means low peak torque and lower risk of injury because cleats release properly. There's nothing more important than your player's safety. And when it comes to safety, there's proof. Nothing outperforms an AstroTurf field. So if you want your players on the field, not on the sideline, see your AstroTurf representative for everything you need to make an informed choice about the safety of your field. AstroTurf, the closest to natural grass.